everybody, my name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the LA Lakers. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials in the description as well, and let's go ahead and get started. So the Lakers season, like a lot of teams, honestly, that we had high expectations for coming the year, has not gotten off to a great start. Granted, it's a small sample size, it's 5 games, but a 2-3 record is not what the Lakers or their fans had in mind. Like I said, they're not alone in this. I've talked about how the Nets have not had a great start to their season. The Bucks have had issues at times as well. Philly had a game where they really did not finish the game well at all against Brooklyn. But the Lakers specifically are an interesting case here because how much they changed their roster in the offseason and because of how their season went last year, finishing much lower in the standings than they thought that they would have and not even winning a playoff series. So we're going to talk about what's going wrong here for LA to begin the season, kind of what it means the rest of the way. So like I said, 2-3 record to begin the season. They have a 3-point win against the Grizzlies and an overtime win over the Spurs without LeBron James, and losses to Golden State, Phoenix, and Oklahoma City. And this most recent loss to Oklahoma City is the one that really made me feel like they needed a video. Because at that point, it was pretty typical stuff, right? But now we're looking at a situation where, yes, there's no LeBron, but Oklahoma City's not even trying to win basketball games this year. And they gave up a 26-point lead in that game. I think it's their worst blown lead in the last 25 years. They're up 26 and lost to Oklahoma City, which credit to the Thunder. But again, that's a team they're not even trying to win basketball games. And the Lakers are supposed to be a title competing team. It's kind of unbelievable. So like I said, LeBron hasn't played in the last couple of games, and there's clearly some things wrong here. But the thing I want to start with here is Russell Westbrook. I actually kind of thought that the idea behind resting LeBron these last 2 games, it had to do with, yes, resting the ankle, making sure, as they said, they're running a marathon here, not a sprint. They're taking a marathon approach. But I also kind of felt like they wanted to let Russ be Russ for a couple of games, get his rhythm back, help him be, aggressive Russell Westbrook again. Like, let's let LeBron rest. We've got games against San Antonio and Oklahoma City. We should win those games without LeBron. Let's let Russ cook a little bit here. Let's get his confidence up after not playing well at all in the first couple of games. And it kind of worked, but whether it be statistically or from the eye test, the Russell Westbrook thing has just not worked at all. Granted, again, it's just through 5 games. So, we can talk about the stats first. He's shooting under 20% from 3, averaging 6 turnovers a game. He's shooting under 50% from the free throw line. He's one of the worst free throw shooters in the league at almost 4 attempts per game, which for Russell Westbrook is not very many attempts, but it's enough to say that, man, we're really having some issues making free throws here. And the free throw thing especially is really concerning when you look at that's been kind of a marker of whether Russ is in a rhythm or not, is when he's not playing well or he's not knocking down shots, the free throw percentage suffers and his aggressiveness suffers as a result because he doesn't want to get fouled. When Russ was at his peak and winning the MVP, he was easily a guy that was shooting 70+% for the free throw line. And that number has dipped a lot over the last couple of seasons, which is a concern when you're talking about, either a guy's confidence or their just ability to shoot the basketball in general. And even when you go away from the stats, the eye test is just not great either for Russ. He looks lost. He looks out of rhythm. He doesn't look like he knows his place in this team. And even without LeBron out there were times where Russ just didn't look confident, looked like he was in a rut, which is fine. Guys go in slumps all the time, but when you're supposed to be the big addition, and when the Lakers, they didn't have any assets to begin with, but they used whatever assets they had to go out and get you to raise the ceiling of this team, and you've looked the way he has to begin the season, it's going to be a concern. And for me, everything about this team revolves around Russell Westbrook and his play. We have a track record of LeBron and Anthony Davis playing really, really well on a championship team. So as long as those guys are healthy, I'm not concerned about them. I know that they've each had injury issues since that championship, and it's been a very condensed couple of seasons, and LeBron is getting older, but there's a track record there. There's something we can point to that even if those guys weren't playing particularly well, you can point to and say, when they're healthy, when we get to the postseason, we should be fine. We don't have that for Russell Westbrook unless you go back to him making the finals with Oklahoma City with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Serge Ibaka. Unless you go all the way back to that, we don't have a track record of this is the moment where Russell Westbrook was in any role, in any capacity, whether he was the guy, whether he was a complimentary star. We don't have any evidence of him being a key guy on a championship caliber team. And he's arguably the most accommodated star in the entire league when it comes to his inability to space the floor. When you go back to his time in Houston and them going super, super small, and then we just don't have a track record of this guy doing what LeBron and Anthony Davis have done. So everything for me in terms of concerns around this team revolves around Russ. And we're really, really close here to kind of wrap up the Russ point to having a conversation about whether or not Russell Westbrook should be finishing basketball games for the Lakers. If LeBron is healthy and Anthony Davis is healthy, I'm not sure why Russ needs to be on the floor with the way that he's playing right now. I'm sure he'll figure it out, but you're shooting under 50% from the free throw line. So when we're, under 8 minutes to go and you're driving to the rim, if you get fouled, we're getting at best 1 point out of that possession. That's just not going to cut it. You can't space the floor, and you're going to be off the ball if LeBron's out there. That's a concern. You can't guard at all, and you just don't look like you really have any kind of rhythm or any kind of feel about what you're supposed to be doing out there on the floor. So why are you in the game? He's important for those 10 to 12 minutes that LeBron doesn't play per game. And those 10 to 12 minutes are critical because the Lakers in general have been really, really bad when LeBron isn't on the floor. And Russ being out there, being, the offensive focal point that he was brought in to be and taking some of that offensive responsibility off of LeBron and off of Anthony Davis. Yeah, I'm sure he'll do that, and he'll do that well for most of the regular season. But when we get down to the postseason and we need a guy out there on the floor, if he can't space, he's not the primary offensive initiator, he doesn't defend, he's an awful free throw shooter, and he has one of the highest turnover rates in the league, that's not a recipe for a guy you want on the floor at the end of games. I'm sure he'll do some positive things throughout the rest of the year, but this is a real concern for me, and it's the only big concern that I have about the Lakers as a whole. Now let's talk about the Lakers as a whole, because this isn't a Russell Westbrook video, this is a Lakers video, right? As a whole, they've actually been pretty decent offensively, and their struggles, even with, how poorly Russell Westbrook has been playing to this point, really don't lie on that end of the floor. They're shooting way better than I think anybody would have thought that they would have, especially with how poorly Russ is shooting the ball. In terms of three-point percentage, they're doing very well. In terms of attempts, they're doing very well. They're getting good contributions out of guys like Malik Monk and Carmelo Anthony. But defensively, they are statistically one of the worst defensive teams in the entire league, which is a huge concern for two reasons. One, they've shown in the past that their main strength is their ability to defend and their overwhelming size. And that has not come through for them so far this year. And everything that we've known about the Lakers for 2 years has been flipped. They're not supposed to be a team that's going to be able to space the floor well, but they're going to be able to guard. They're going to win the rebounding battle. They're going to be bigger than you and stronger than you. And right now, that defense is not showing up. The other reason why that's a concern is because of the significant roster shakeup to this group coming into the season. They miss Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They miss Kyle Kuzma, two guys that are at least solid defenders that bring decent size to their position. They don't have guys like that they can put on the floor right now. There's a lot of Kent Bazemore. There's a lot of Carmelo Anthony. There's a lot of DeAndre Jordan. And yes, I know that they're missing guys. I know that there are guys hurt like Kendrick Nunn, Talen Horton-Tucker, Trevor Ariza. But if those are the guys you're waiting around on to come back and save your season and solidify your lineup, you're in a bad spot to begin with. So that is absolutely a concern for me when you look at the way that this roster is made up. We're supposed to be seeing more Anthony Davis at the 5. They have not had the same level of defensive potency that they're supposed to have with or without LeBron, with Anthony Davis at the 5 or not. They've always been a really good defensive team. And it's not like they're playing some of the best teams in the league. Like, yes, Golden State's very good. Phoenix is very good. The Grizzlies have been very good. But San Antonio and Oklahoma City, you should not be giving up a lot of points to those two teams. And it has been a huge issue. So ultimately, I have faith they're going to be able to figure out the defensive thing. They'll play Anthony Davis at the 5 more as we get down the stretch. They've never had like super high level wing defenders anyway, and they still managed to be a really good defensive team. I mean, like I said, KCP and Kuzma and guys like that were out there guarding. So they've always been a team that has relied on the defensive brilliance of Anthony Davis and their overwhelming size to be a really good defensive team. And so ultimately, Frank Vogel, there's a track record there of a guy that's going to be able to figure out some of their defensive issues. And so ultimately, everything for me is a minor concern for LA, defense, lack of depth, except for Russ. The Westbrook thing is a glaring flaw and a glaring weakness to this point in the season. Is there going to be an opportunity to figure it out? Absolutely. Russell Westbrook, make no mistake, is an incredible basketball player, but he's a flawed one and one that needs to be accommodated. And I'm not sure that A, the Lakers are going to accommodate him because they have Anthony Davis and LeBron James. They're not going to accommodate Russ at the expense of those guys. Or B, I don't know if they are capable of accommodating the flaws that Russell Westbrook brings to the floor because of the way that their roster is put together. And ultimately, I think it could lead to a situation where Russell Westbrook becomes a much less significant part of this roster than we thought that he would coming into the season. Once we get to the playoffs, he might not be in the closing lineup. He might not be a guy that's averaging 20 points per game this season. He might basically be a glorified sixth man by the time the Lakers get to the most efficient version of themselves, where they really rely on him for the minutes that LeBron's not on the floor. And apart from that, this is still LeBron and Anthony Davis's team, but with a worse supporting cast around them as a result of the Russell Westbrook trade, which would honestly be, considering what they could have gotten for Russ with Buddy Hield, a borderline disaster. And yeah, that's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials in the description. Check out the boxes on screen as well for more videos just like this from me, including a Bulls video as well that I put out the other day talking about their hot start. So I'm just gonna be kind of covering teams day to day that I find interesting throughout the NBA. But that is gonna be the end of the video. As I said, hope you enjoyed it. Once again, my name is Tucker, and I will see you all next time.